After 608 days, 3 lockdowns, 2 cancelled tournaments, and 1 sneaky change of coach, it's so good to see the Springboks back out once again, to see them bell out the anthem, set up for kickoff, and get right back to where they were November 2nd, 2019. Okay. Well, after 2 years and ill-prepared tour of the United Kingdom and a few batterings, it's so good to see the properly competitive Georgia back. The side who really pushed Australia, Wales and Ireland, who gave the All Blacks a proper game, who don't lie down and concede cheap tries the first time they need to defend. Okay. Right, I see where we are. Friday night saw the biggest men in rugby with beards play the biggest men in rugby without beards, as the Springboks were made to fight harder than they probably expected against a Georgia team who had them kind of on the ropes for a solid 35 minutes. It was a really good showing for Georgia, who were still trying to prove their place in the rugby world, but ultimately South Africa were able to wrestle supremacy back for the clean-shaven 16-foot, 48-stone men of the world. Now, as much as there is to dig into Georgia's performance, with this first test against the British and Irish Lions just 3 weeks away, I want to instead focus on what Friday taught us about the Springboks, whether anything is changing and how they might approach this coming series. A lot has changed off the field since that 2019 final, with Jacques Nene taking over and Rassie Erasmus moving himself metaphorically upstairs but literally downstairs, probably sick of heaving 16 tons of raw big dick energy up the stairs and deciding to park himself on the touchline instead. And so it only makes sense that a lot should change on the field as well, as the Springboks rung in 2021 by sprucing up their attacking shape and structure, but also keeping certain consistencies from the time that they won the World Cup. I don't know if anyone remembers that, especially in South Africans out there. I don't know if you might remember this, but they won the World Cup about 2 years ago. Yeah, nice one, guys. Good job. Here he is. Yeah, well done. And let's start with that change on the touchline, because the Springboks already used to put Jacques Nene as the water boy, meaning he could stand on the touchline and bark orders at the defence. Sometimes Nene would even be the guy calling when the team go up as a line, when they apply pressure, when they drift from the touchline. He cut out any middleman and took control himself. This is something that will be especially important now South Africa are trying to fill the huge Duane Vermeulen-shaped hole in their team, which is also something I presume he leaves every time he exits a room. I don't know why, right? But I just can't imagine Duane Vermeulen struggling to turn a tricky doorknob. He just seems like the kind of guy who would save the hassle and time and just smash right through the wall instead. But he also seems like a pretty good guy, so he'd probably call the plaster and pay for it himself. Even beyond the whole experienced leadership, man of the match in the World Cup final, blah 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 thing, Vermeulen is utterly crucial to the Springboks team. Whilst Rassie is getting closer and closer to his eventual goal of uploading his consciousness into every play and controlling them directly, Duane Vermeulen means that isn't always necessary. The following is something that was pointed out to me by Connor from Wibble Rugby during a recent and horrendously nerdy Zoom call, so huge kudos to him, thank you very much. And to demonstrate it, I'm going to show some clips from when South Africa won that World Cup, if anyone remembers it. You know, it's probably a huge bother, probably a huge inconvenience. No South African fans will want to see this. Vermeulen's job was not to make tackles or even turnovers. Vermeulen's job was this: England crash at first phase and Vermeulen watches and assesses. He keeps an eye on how the attack aligns from both sides, watching for England's assorted playmakers, checking where the wing is set, how the forwards position themselves. He screams instructions, pointing, shouting, keeping an eye on any danger men. Most defences traditionally have been organised by the 10 or 12 in midfield, but Vermeulen stayed near the ruck, giving him a better vantage point without an opposite man to watch. Vermeulen doesn't scream or shout every phase. He only does it when the defence isn't aligned correctly or when the attack has several options. He'll make a judgment on which way he thinks they'll go, and he's almost always correct. Even when the Boks defence isn't numbered up, even when it leads to a line break or even a try, Vermeulen has normally seemingly called that in advance, and it was just on the other players not responding to his spot fast enough. He's like having a defence coach on the field who happens to also be doing a tarot reading for every play. This, more than his carrying or work rate, is what the Springboks are trying to replace. So, instead of the more powerful Jasper Wiese or Dan du Plessis, in came Kwagga Smith. Now, in Chasing the Sun, which I still don't understand why I'm in, Erasmus said he took Kwagga to Japan over other back row options largely because he's such a good analyst, and that helped the team more during weeks where he wasn't playing than another player who'd just be holding tacklebacks. And so, he became the natural replacement for Vermeulen, slotting into this role, organising the defence from around the ruck. Georgia didn't exactly run much in the way of complicated patterns off second or third phase to give him that much practice, but Smith seemed so far to be slotting him pretty nicely, and I'd be surprised if he doesn't get the nod in that shirt for the first test when the Lions will be running far more complicated moves. However, during the World Cup, only one team seemed to figure out Vermeulen's role in defence and come up with a way to counter it, and that was, of course, Warren Gatland's Wales, who frequently targeted him. If Vermeulen is making a tackle, he's no longer in the game and he can't predict the next movement. This is the best set move Gatland had to target the Springboks defence, but before Wales run it, they send Jake Ball right into Dwayne's face to make sure he can't make the read as he'll be at the bottom of the ruck. And it's not a one-off, right? Before this break by Josh Adams, who do Wales carry right into? Who does Owens target? Dwayne Vermeulen. Quagga Smith is perhaps the only back row the Boks have who can fill this role, left vacant after Ford lost his hammer during the Rainbow Cup, but there's no way Gatland isn't already drawing up plans to exploit whoever it is in that 8 shirt. How and who coordinates the South African defence is going to be an incredibly interesting subplot as this series draws close. Because Rassie can easily play the knee neighbour role, marshalling the defence on the touchline, but having the overall DOR instead of a dude who's only interested in the defence allows the coaching team to take more direct control of the entire game. During the World Cup, Rassie would often call when the Springboks used practice and pre-designed moves himself, but it no longer has to come via a microphone. He can just shout it live in real time and help the Springboks change shape without a stoppage. Because we did start to see some variation in attack from what the Boks were doing in the World Cup. The idea is the same as always been, playing power rugby as intelligently as possible. The Boks are still using the 1-3-3-1 shape, and whilst there was less of the usual pressure kicking tactics, that's exactly the same as what happened when Cobus Reinach last started against Canada. The Boks were happier to play 8 or 9 phases to see if anything happened instead of their standard 5 or 6, and against a side like Canada, bless them, something usually did happen, and on Friday night the Boks either opened up Georgia or coughed the ball up against a defence far more aggressive than Canada, bless them. However, within that same system, the details are changing. Knee neighbour and attack coach Wanky Stick, whose name is the kind of thing love interest in Roger Moore Bond movies would be called if 007 was gay, have plucked a few choice changes from the last 2 years of rugby innovation to freshen things up a tad. The lead up to Scarlet's Legend! Herschel Yankees' try was reminiscent of Fabien Gautier's France, remixed with the typical South African brawn. Normally, South Africa group their forwards together with support on hand pretty much just to clear out to secure the ball for the next phase. Despite very much being the vogue for everyone else, the Rassie Boks rarely threw tip-on passes that's these little balls from one forward to another to shift the point of focus last second. Instead, they just focus on carrying fast and hard. Who cares what the point of focus is if it's gone into your eye? At the World Cup, a group such as this, Ore, Toy and Smith, would be grouped together like this, together, you know, as a free. The defence knows what's coming, but good luck trying to stop it. They still did this plenty often on Friday, but we also saw new variations such as this, them spreading out and giving Yankees free options to hit as well as Pollard behind. This ball could realistically just as easily go to any of 4 players. Du Toit then drops it off to Smith, who takes a hell of a shot by Sharakadze and Kvezeladze, but being thundered backwards isn't that important. It took both Georgian centres to do that, and now, when Yankees flashes back, the only Georgians on this side are forwards. Kitchoff, Mostert, Malherbe, spreading themselves out means their Eastern European counterparts have to just watch them, granting Pollard loads of time on the ball. The longer he has it, the flatter Tabitsadze is forced to get, and it opens up space behind for the kick, whilst they stop Willemse. They can't get those forwards watching Mostert et al. Back in time to prevent Yankees creeping over. Being okay with taking a backward step is very un-Rassie, but if one backward step means the opposition lose their 2 best tacklers on the next phase, it's worth it. Don't get me wrong, the Boks are still hell-bent on powering themselves forward. The tries from Malcolm Marks, Bonke and Benambi, and this by Quagga Smith, coming straight from set piece, prove that. But some things have kind of been added to try and prepare for the upcoming challenge of the more battle-hardened British and Irish Lions. A squad of players who've each played 8 or 9 internationals since the Boks last played a test, and Sam Simmons. We saw a pretty good meshing of old and new on South Africa's first attack of the game, eventually leading to this try on his first touch for Afalele Farsi. The 2019 Springbok attack was built on making the most of their own strengths, but this try was all about trying to match those strengths up to Georgia's own weaknesses. The Lelo's captain, Merab Sharakadze, is an excellent player. He's a properly composed, calm and wise inside centre, and as such he's the guy who leads and organises the Georgian defence. However, whereas Vermeulen did this from around the ruck, Sharakadze is far more old school and likes to lead by example from the middle of the defensive line. He's essentially a very stretchy glue, holding together their forwards and backs, making sure their attack never disjoints. So, what the Springboks are trying to do is essentially just get him out the way, to split him up from his regular inside and outside support, number 10 Absendadze and 13 Kvezeladze, to take the guys organising the defence away from where the Boks want to attack. So, off the line out, Khaleesi charges right at the 2 centres, but Kvezeladze is able to make the tackle alone, and Sharakadze can fold around the corner and manage the defence to keep them joined up. Now, As Peter Steph receives the ball, keep an eye on Handré Pollard. He points at Sharakadze, letting the lanky lamppost know which lump of flesh he's supposed to leave the bruises on this time. Dutoit charges right at Sharakadze's shoulder and takes him out of the game. Absendadze spies the box going open side again and flies round to join the line on that side. Meaning, once Sharakadze gets back up to his feet, he hasn't time to process and assess the attack. He just looks for his number 10 to join him. So he sprints to a part of the field where South Africa aren't setting up to attack. All this manipulation of the Georgian midfield has left them with only forwards on the blind side and nobody there to organise the defence. Sharakadze nowhere to be seen. And so the Boks get round them with ease. Pollard and LaRue fixing the remaining winger and allowing Dutoit to draw Niniashvili and put Farsi away for his first test try, which he finishes just superbly. This pattern with Pollard and LaRue both playing as a kind of fly half in too many backlines behind a forward pod has been in their game previously, but it's interesting they should pull it in their first attack, when it's exactly a structure Lions attack coach Cricket Townsend used to open at the Boks themselves last time he faced them in 2018, and one we've seen the Lions use already this tour. There were a few flashes of Townsend-esque interlinking, and once the Boks hit a greater groove in the second half, they started also playing his trademark fast phases to create room for more ambitious passes and kicks. In 2009, the Lions came with a team who wanted to try and match the Springboks and beat them at their own game. In 2021, the Springboks are just starting to send the message, we can play your game as well as you can, so why not see if you can match us at ours? If I were Erasmus or Nienaber, I'd be pretty happy with Friday. A solid performance, a very decent scoreline, and more importantly, the Georgians really stood up. Whereas the Springboks play organised, intelligent forwards rugby, Georgia play messy forwards rugby, chaotic forwards rugby, and they managed to drag South Africa into the mud pit to play their way for a really long time. This will be a huge learning tool for them, showing they can compete with the best team in the world and give the Boks players a proper situation to find their way out of. The South Africans were faced with a side who can match them for brawn, who can match them for passion, and caught them a bit off guard, and yet the Boks were able to switch things up and start playing more expansively without much panic whilst reasserting themselves at the set piece and calmly take control of the game before half-time. But the biggest bonus is that after 608 days, 2 cancelled tours and an abandoned championship, South Africa finally played another rugby match, another chance to belt out the anthem, set it for kickoff and prepare to try and make July 24th, 31st and August 7th just as special as that one day back in November 2019. Unfortunately, the second test between these two teams won't be going ahead, so it looks like that's all we're going to do with the Boks until that first test. So focus is going to switch primarily to the Lions. That's what I'm going to be looking at mostly. I'm trying to round up the games maybe 1 or 2 at a time while we've got the midweek games going on. That's the idea, so I'm going to move on to doing the last couple of Lions games next. So that's all going to be rolling on as we build up towards this test series. There's loads of other rugby going on, and I'm going to kind of pick and choose and see if I can do bits of Australia versus France and so on, because I've got a lot on my plate even beyond this Lions tour. So yeah, thank you very much for watching that. Thank you to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon and makes this all possible. You know, being able to turn these things around in the week makes that possible. Thank you very much for all of you for being such wonderful human beings, and I'll see you very soon for more rugby.
Sinemi kuthiwa yimincili ne excitement
See, excitement.
hayi nasiya so yeah